I'll be able to control it once you get logged.
Okay. Let me do it.
You have to password everything, right?
Password? No.
Wayne, would you like to hop up?
Well, I think, do I just type?
You've logged into it before, right?
I have, but not on my new laptop. I forget the number. Do I need a password for this part?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to do login.
All right. Is that where you're supposed to be? That's the back end.
You said you've logged into it before, right?
Just as a user, not as a
Right.
login. I don't think I've officially logged in.
I thought you logged in.
So the 4 questions
Oh,
that
no.
we're going to ask you to respond
This is gonna be
to on Wednesday are actually going to help guide the conversation that we had this morning.
Why is it
All right. So what we're looking for is information about what excites you. Right? What is it that you have as priorities? What's coming up as of interest in your life, professionally, and in your organizations?
We have to log in.
Hmm?
We have to log in.
I know.
Okay.
It's either that or we got to switch computers.
Or I can go manually.
Yeah.
I can do that right
Yeah.
now. What do you think?
What do you think?
Go manually?
Yeah.
Why don't you go manually until we catch up?
I can do that.
Good idea.
All right. So, mark of any good geospatial professional is being able to adapt, right? We'll see how this works out.
The first group's already in.
Here you go. Are they already in?
Well, I'm just saying this, the survey's open and people are voting and stuff's in. The only thing we can't do is display it.
Oh,
Okay.
that's fun. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can.
All right. Well, why don't you describe what you're doing?
Well, why don't we ask the
Don't keep
question?
it a secret.
What's the question?
So the first question should be, what part of your job excites you? And what did we learn?
Oh my gosh, learning new things is big. Working with data is next. And implementing solutions those are the top 3. But learning new things for this particular group is the top
Ooh.
by a substantial amount.
Would you like the microphone?
While we're waiting for that to come up, I'm going to actually insert a question in there. How many of you have been practicing? Because I'm really intrigued about this learning new things
Yeah.
concept. How many of you have been practicing GIS for less than 5 years? Quite a few. All right. How many of you have been practicing more than 10 and you're still excited about learning new things? That's a good thing. All right. Fantastic. So we up for our next question?
Yeah, let's, okay, next question. Go ahead.
Next question is, list a couple of GIS projects that you've got planned over the next 12 to 18 months. What am I doing with this? What is this? I'm on the mic, thank you. So what are you getting?
Well, they're in the process of putting it in right now.
All right. Make it relatively short answers so we don't need an entire project description. New road layer, new parcel layer.
Okay. There.
Solve the problems of the universe, whatever works. You like that? All right, so I'm beginning to conduct a regular test now. So when I say the answer to all things is 42, how many of you have any idea what I'm not, how many of you don't know what I'm talking about? When I say the answer to all things is 42, how many of you do not understand that reference? All right, homework. Where does that come from?
What do you want?
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. If you have not seen the movie, better read the book. That is your homework assignment. Cult classic, you must look into it. Yes, I'm getting old and I recognize it and I'm embracing it. All
You
right,
want this?
what do we got? Oh, we're up. Fantastic.
Here.
Now, since they can't read, you'll have to.
You want her?
Since they probably can't read from back there, we'll have to look at back up.
I can do that. All right.
Do you want the mic?
So according to your well-informed answers, the types of projects, actually, this is really interesting, Megan. The types of project that we're looking for over the next 12 to 18 months. We've got geospatial data governance. We have airports. How many of you are doing airport projects in here? Got a couple. Got one. There you go. Now I know where that came from. Road network analysis. Anybody doing work on the roads layers? Quite a few in here. GIS implementation. Yep. Indoors GIS. How many of you are actually working on the indoors technology now? That's becoming a very big thing. How many of you are potentially looking in the future at developing indoor geospatial systems? CAD, right? BIM, building information systems. Equity matrix map, web application, and road closure map. How many of you are integrating the concept of equity in your GIS? How many of you have no idea how to integrate equity into your GIS work? There's a few, okay. Not an unimportant question, it's a big deal today. LiDAR mapping and processing, locate ticket apps and party buses to Evansville. How many of you doing work with LiDAR over the next year, year and a half? Got a few of you. Metadata. Enough said. Yes, important. Revamping and creating new interactive maps with Experience Builder. How many of you are using Experience Builder now?
I don't think I need this anymore. I don't think I need it anymore. We'll give it to Megan.
Put Experience Builder even is. Got a few. Okay, well that has to come up later on. Creating web map viewers, learning Survey 123. How many of you are using Survey 123? Okay, all right. Let's see, I'm not going to go through every one of these. County boundaries, section corner layers. How many of you are dealing with boundaries? That was a big topic last year. Okay, all right. We talked about CAD, BIM. All right. All right. So the question is that you need to answer right now, given we work better as a team, what do you need to get your projects done? I am very intrigued to see what comes back here. This is very interesting. We certainly have some outstanders.
So we had vendors in here to be like gigging fish in a barrel.
No kidding. All right, technical expertise is definitely high up on the topic here. So what I'm hearing, I think, is you need more training. Is that what I'm seeing here? Okay. Also big, making the time to figure it out. Okay, I need to know, has anybody figured out how to make the 24-hour days 48 hours? Because if you have, we need to talk. I want to do that. Resources, dollars, and people. That's our next one down. Yes, never ending. And then hardware, software systems. How many of you are technology limited? Quite a few. Yeah, I mean, it's always a challenge trying to keep up with it. And then on the other side, we've got things that don't stand out as much, but not ignored either. One is good policies, right? So what is it that stands in your way? It's not the technology, it's the policy that may prevent you from doing the things you need to do or know how to do. Sounding board for ideas. That one's really interesting because that sounds an awful lot like what we're trying to accomplish here today. So if you chose that one or if that one intrigues you, then this is your opportunity to sound those ideas. Please do. And by the way, I'm going to mention this as well. If you're not comfortable bringing something up that you just wish somebody would say out loud, but you're not comfortable doing it yourself, I'm going to offer myself, Joanne, any of the folks that are facilitating this, come to us. We'll be happy to say it for you, right? Because that way you don't have to put yourself on the spot, and we will do that and do it anonymously. So don't worry about that if you want to do that. Assistance making your case. That's actually really interesting. A few years ago when we started this forum, I heard many people say that the decision makers, the folks they work with, even the citizens in their communities, looked at what we do professionally as a luxury, not a necessity. Have we moved past that point? What do you think? I mean, do people actually recognize the importance of what we do, building the data we do, building the systems that we do? Have we reached that? I'm glad to see that, because that's a paradigm shift, and it's an important one. Navigating a political environment. Politics don't play a role in what you do. That's intriguing. That's good. All right, great responses. Let's do we have one more question we're going to do now, and then we'll go to the next part. So what are the top 2 or 3 most important types of data that you'd like to have, but you don't? That's an important one. What do you wish that you had, but you don't? Don't think of this as you have to build it yourself, but you wish you had access to it. Somebody builds it. Somebody provides it. This is your holiday wish list opportunity. Interesting. Keep them coming. This is going to be a great segue into the next discussion. Infrastructure is really standing out there. On the infrastructure front, you can always add more information. I'm really intrigued about what type of infrastructure. You're talking about utilities, you're talking about transportation, you're talking about communication of some type. Imagery, that's a big one. Wow, infrastructure is really popping out there. There's a lot of people putting infrastructure in there. You don't have to necessarily enter an answer, but what kind, if anybody wants to be brave and put it out there, what kind of infrastructure data? What's that? Utilities? Any particular type?
Private utilities.
Private utilities. Okay, that's getting to it. What else? EMS. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so utilities is a big one. Metadata. What's that? Right-of-ways. Okay. Demographics have actually fallen back a little bit in the priority list, but I see a lot of stuff still here. So this is really interesting to me, and it is a wonderful segue to, you're finished, right, Joanne? Yes. Right, so this is a great segue to what comes next, which is going to be Megan. Because what I'm seeing up here, and Megan, I hope maybe you agree with this, you tell me, what I see is a combination of these are things that we want that don't exist and things that exist that we don't know about necessarily. Does that look right to you? And that's a good thing, because one of the things I love about the community concept in the state is sometimes whenever I'm teaching a class or working with a colleague or partner in the community, the first thing I tell them is assume it exists unless you're absolutely positive that it doesn't. And in all likelihood, the chances are that somebody knows something you don't know. So this is our opportunity to work as a community, right? Let's find out what exists out there. Anything else? All right, so let's cut off the Menti and switch computers here. Megan, you're next. Yes. So we are going to take a one function, I don't care what function you choose to make that, 5-minute break to give Megan an opportunity to come up and switch computers with Joanne. And if you've not already taken advantage of it, there are refreshments across the hall, coffee, I believe there's some pastries and so forth. So go get something to rejuvenate yourself, because this next part of the forum is going to be really interactive, very engaging. All right. 5 minutes.
Mic test. Mic test.
Talk to you about how you're
Mike is hot right now, so whatever is taken out, it's just gonna go live.
Say when, get their attention.
Is it easier for you to look at this?
Yeah.
Do you prefer to have a mouse or just
I'll probably look at this at the break.
what?
I'll look at this at the break.
So the way to do it is to click on the slide here rather than try to do something.
Okay.
But this is the summarized.
I think I'll just use it for notes. Okay. Cool.
All right.
Okay. I'll do this at the break so I'm going to do like a gyro thing and then we're going to break and then we'll do this.
So for the next, let's see, next around time. For the next couple of hours, you're going to hear a combination of things. One is what's going on in the world of the GIO's office. The second is what I think is going to be a really interesting, very highly interactive conversation where you get to be part of the discussion. It's going to make or help guide what's going to happen over the coming year. Maybe it's all yours.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. That's good. All right. Good morning. Thank you very much for being here. This is an amazing turnout. I will apologize in advance for my voice and a potential cough. My youngest daughter, who we're trying to teach how to share toys, is very good at sharing germs as well. So this is what I think is day 97 of my cold, but I'm hoping it will go away. So right now, really, it's just a residual cough, which seasonal, so that'll happen. All right, well, good morning. So it's very nice to be here. I'm gonna do a little bit of an overview of what our office does, because I saw quite a few folks who are new here. And I'm really excited about that. And then I'm going to go through some of the things that we've been doing since we were in this room last year. Because that's what people want to know, right? We walk out of this room, we spend most of the day here, and we talk a lot. What happens after that? What do we do? Well, we've been doing a lot. And I'm really excited to share some of that with you. Before I get started, my name is Megan Compton. I've been in this role as the GIO for about 4.5 years, which feels like 4.5 weeks, but goes very fast. It's been an amazing journey, and I'm very fortunate. I'm our state's second geographic information officer. Jim Sparks was in this role for 10 years and really laid an amazing foundation for what this office can do, which has enabled this geospatial community across the state to do beautiful things. Kevin said it earlier, and I'll repeat it again throughout this discussion, but Indiana really is setting the bar. We are leading the way in so many ways, and that's because of all of you and all of your input that you provide here as well. So our office we're located downtown, and we are in the government center, so we're part of the Indiana Office of Technology. And with that, we are able to bring together a slightly more technical team that kind of works behind us. I know some of your offices in county and city government, you might be placed within IT, and some of those are benefits, and some of those present some challenges as well. We have a very small team, myself and 3 other team members, 2 of whom are here today. Matt, can you wave? Matt Evans is not our newest hire, but our second to newest hire. Matt is in charge of Indiana Map. So we'll be talking quite a bit about that today. And Sean Scholler, whom most of you know, manages our imagery program as well as our data harvest programs and a whole slew of other things as well. Who is not with us today is Sandeep Bare, who many of you might know from the city of Indianapolis. He joined our team recently about 6 weeks ago and is working most focused on data governance, also on our geospatial infrastructure, and helping to advance us in a very highly technical way that I understand about half of what he says. So, all right, so that's our team. We are small, but I want to be really honest. We are able to do the things that we do because of what this group brings to the table. Joanne mentioned early on that we have a lot of committees within IGIC that help support us, and that's absolutely true. We have an imagery committee that helps us determine what our priorities are. The Data Standards Committee and the Data Sharing Committee help us understand what the priorities are across the state. We have the work that we do with the cadastral group helps us keep really focused on whether or not, like, what's happening with parcels, what's happening with boundaries. Are things making sense? Streets and center lines has been heavily utilized and very impactful in helping us create data standards that are helping us in the data harvest. So all of these things are part of IGIC committees that empower our office and enable our office to do the things that we are able to do. So thank you for all of those who are involved in the committees, and this is a plug. If you're not involved in one of those committees and you're interested in anything that we talk about today, please dial in, because it's a fantastic opportunity. Okay, so I'm going to start with a little bit about what we heard last year. We came into this discussion last year with, I'm going to try not to fall off the stage, with a lot of questions for all of you. And we came away with, we were blown away by the ideas that the things that we thought were going to be way out there were the things that you all were embracing. One of the top of that list was collaborative editing. This is, I mean, absolutely on the front lines of what state geospatial offices are trying to get to. How do you bring together every single community to look at the same map, to do the same thing in a collaborative way that changes the way that government and utilities and local operations work? So we are on the forefront of that. Improving our access to open data. About a year ago, Indiana Map was not in a good place. I'm happy to say that it is in a much better place now. We are growing, it is advancing, and is really exciting. So I'll go over some of those advances here a little bit today. We talked a lot about connecting dots, and that means in communications as well as in data. So how do we bring together different data sets across county boundaries and make them match up, right? And that kind of goes into this collaborative editing piece, but it also really drove us to push harder on counties on the data harvest and trying to get all of our data standards in alignment so that we can make all of those dots and lines connect. Excuse me. Greater communication, we've been working on that. We have, if you didn't pick it up, we have a new logo. Stickers are outside, really fun. But we are working pretty closely with our communications office to improve the way that we do our external communications. Also internal communications, just within our state agencies. How often do we connect with agencies? How often do we connect not only with ones that are at the table, that are working with us now, but the ones that we need to be working with in the future? So how do we improve that communication? And then also, there was an interest here in improving the way that the speed in which we did the data harvest. So a little bit more notice, a little bit more communication about what was going on in the data harvest. I'll talk about what the data harvest is in a little while for those of you who are not familiar, but we listened and I think we're moving in the right direction. So in the last year, we completed our 5-year strategic plan. This was a monumental effort. And many of you, how many of you in the room participated in the strategic planning that our office did? I'm looking around, it's most of you. Steve's like, I think I did, but I can't remember. Yeah, if you answered a survey, if you were involved in a work group, if you had an interview, if you talked to us at any point in the last 3 years, your opinion was part of this survey, or was part of this strategic plan. This helped us understand what we need to do next. So between this conversation here, the conversations that we have to have across the street, get to have across the street with the governor's office and the state legislature, and then the feedback that we get from the partners involved in the strategic plan help us understand where we need to focus. So I don't expect you all to read this, but we were able to set some things up into some priorities. And the things that come up to the top of the list, and these are all the things that came up as far as goals. So this is the plan for our office for the next 5 years. And again, don't read this. It's a bit daunting. Funny that some of the things that were prioritized were things that were highly technical, like infrastructure. I saw earlier, people were interested in infrastructure data. We've been focused on infrastructure in a bit of a different way, more like the backbone, right? Also, a lot more in helping to advance our office so that we can advance the state, even more so than what we have been, focusing on trying to obtain stable funding so that we can enable offices and we don't have to have barriers to, we don't have the money to do this, which we're working really, really heavily on. All right. I'm going to brag about the state a little bit. Some of you have seen this. In 2021, our national partners, NISGIC, which is the National States Geographic Information Council, did a geospatial maturity assessment. And in that assessment, they go through a series of areas where they grade every state and all of their operations and things that we do. I'm going to flip forward and show you the scorecard. So this was our scorecard. These are the areas in which we get graded. We get graded in state-led themes, and then we also get graded in federal-led themes. So these are data sets. But things that are also measured in here is coordination. Things that are also measured in here is collaboration and the way that, what's the maturity of our office? What's the maturity of our state as far as geospatial priorities go? This might be a little bit hard to read in the back because there's various shades of blue, but Indiana received an A for the first time in 2021 on the geospatial maturity assessment, and it was the only A in the country. That's you. That's you. Come on. So I just had an opportunity last month to go to Portland to our district conference, and which is my counterparts from other states, and we were asked to talk about what are you doing? How did you get the A? And then really, we'll talk about this in the data harvest too. Much like in this group, that group is extremely collaborative. It's a fun environment. It's an environment in which they say, okay, you're doing this really well. How can I learn from you? But we also find our colleagues that are doing really well in other areas that we can learn from them. So we pull all of that information just like we do here at the county level. So I'll flip past this. I have until what time? What time am I off? 10? Oh, goodness gracious. I have you until noon. Okay. So a couple of projects that are priorities projects for us, these are listed on the screen. Some of these are year after year projects, and some of them kind of pop up. And we answer to all of those things. So the ones that are every year that we are continuously driving the maturity, our imagery program, our statewide data harvest, our LiDAR planning, right? Those are projects that are like stable for us. Things that come up that we get to talk about, Next Gen 911, Indiana broadband. How do we incorporate utility stuff? It's really encouraging that you all are interested in utility data, and we're trying to figure out that same puzzle. So I'm gonna dig into that a little bit more when we talk later. I'm gonna talk about some of these projects in a little bit more detail. I'm gonna start with Indiana Map. So for those of you, to give a little bit of background, Indiana Map is Indiana's geospatial open data portal. It has been for decades. And so over the last couple of decades, it has matured into an amazing product that is utilized, and literally people make thousands of maps a week. It's outstanding. Our partners at the Geological and Water Survey at IU in Bloomington were managing the Indiana Map for 20 years and did a spectacular job. Because of some of the infrastructure changes that we've made and some of the opportunities with the new technology that I'll talk about here, we were able to bring Indiana Map in-house to the Geographic Information Office. This is a partnership with the Indiana Map Steering Committee within IGIC. So that group helps us to understand what are your priorities for Indiana Map, and then we, as the Geographic Information Office, have a statutory responsibility to make data open to the public. So this is a partnership. We have the responsibility to do so, and we're able to do so under the name of the Indiana Map, which everybody knows. And if you didn't, now you do. IndianaMap.org will take you to this homepage. And I mentioned earlier, Matt came on board primarily focused on being sure that we are managing this site and building the site to be the best that it can be. It's in its infancy. I want to be very honest. Rome wasn't built in a day, right? So we have to continue the collaboration with all of you, to continue the feedback. I'm going to talk about some of the things that we've been focusing on. So I mentioned data governance and data security, so that's pretty much top of our mind when we talk about how to make data open. What's interesting is I talk with our CIO, our Chief Information Officer in our office, and then our Chief Security Officer, and they are so focused on security and cybersecurity and data security, and many of you that work at the county, city government level, you're all also focused on security. We're over here trying to make all this data open, right? They're over here trying to make it very closed. So how do we bring those two ideas together has been an interesting effort for us. We have an active and very engaged community across Indiana. So we really, really put a whole lot of focus in making sure the Indiana Map is operating exactly how it should. So we've been working closely with the Geological and Water Survey in migrating most of their data sets. This is done through collaboration, which we'll talk about. Much of the DNR and environment and IDEM and Department of Environmental Management layers have also been migrated, and those are migrated through hosted services. We have new legislative boundaries and also staging data sets from the US Census Bureau, USGS, and FEMA. Some of the stuff that we're working through in this is who is the steward of the data? How do we keep the data up to date? How do we maintain really accurate, reliable metadata? So those governance pieces we're building as we're putting these data sets out there. We're working really closely to try and improve those metadata data sets, and most of these have been focused on migrating the things that are currently in our SDE into our data store, and we'll talk about that migration too. But we're also working on cleaning up some of the names, so that when you look at Indiana Map and you look at all the data layers, that the names make sense to you, so that you're not trying to pull in data sets that aren't accurate. So ongoing user support is also a heavy priority. We have a lot of folks that come to the site and it looks entirely different than it used to. So this site's built on Esri Hub technology. Previous site was built on custom JavaScript. We're trying to get away from a custom application into something that is updated and secure and very user-friendly. So the Hub site allows us to do that. The challenge there is that it's entirely new, so people have to learn a new system. So right now, we're working with the steering committee to develop some FAQs, some how-to videos, and work through those so that people can go to the site and learn quickly how to utilize Indiana Map. For those of you who are a little bit maybe unfamiliar with the hub technology, anybody who has access to the site can create their own ArcGIS Online account. It's absolutely free. And so if you have a county commissioner who's interested in what you do and where your data is on Indiana Map, and you can give them an access, you can give them an ArcGIS Online account, doesn't have to come from your account. You can give them an ArcGIS Online account, and they can make their own maps, or they can view your maps. You can create your own maps, you can share maps through this, you can print your own maps. And this is one example here of several different data layers that were brought together for things that need to make sense, right? So you can do all of this just through your browser. So it's pretty straightforward. And I could talk all day about Indiana Map, and I could ask Matt to come up here and talk all day about Indiana Map, but we can get into more detail later. Also, if we're interested later, we can do a demo if that's of interest to anybody. Okay, I talked a little bit about infrastructure. You all talked about infrastructure in terms of data. We've been really focused on infrastructure in terms of the backbone. Over the course of the last 2 years on the infrastructure side, if something could change, it did change. We moved we are moving from server stacks into AWS. I was interested that I didn't hear somebody talk about cloud when we were thinking about things that are coming in the forefront, because that's right there for us. How do we get these data sets hosted in a way that is accessible to everybody, but still maintain security and maintain optimization so that agencies can do what they need to do and users can do what they need to do? So I don't expect you to read this either, but we migrated from on-prem into the cloud, and we're also changing the way that we do our imagery services. I noticed you all are interested in being able to access imagery. That is a challenge because these data sets are huge, right? But we're working on how to optimize those image services so that they are faster and more reliable for you. So we do all of this through different types of collaboration, and this is what the portal environment allows us to do. So we can do some of these through partner collaboration, and then we can do some of these data sharing through distributed collaborations. And it was trying to understand this and trying to understand how to actually get data from DNR into our portal environment and then securely out to Indiana Map, so that when Jeff updates a data layer, we don't have to go through 16 steps to get it out to Indiana Map. That's the idea. So one big workflow, and it looks a little bit like this. When we talk about external collaboration, it looks a little bit more simple, like this. So we have a geological and water survey, for example. So through collaborations, they can share their data to us, we process it through our system, and then we are able to publish it out to Indiana Map. This on the left-hand side is my simple diagram. On the right-hand side is Matt's more sophisticated diagram. I prefer the arrows. When we have the idea to do these collaborations, the idea is great, and that's kind of where I like to be, is in the idea space. And then I like to rely on people much, much smarter than me to figure out the how. We know it's possible, but what are the steps that we need to do to make it happen? And that requires that technical expertise. And I saw that in the survey that in the Mentimeter as well, that you were all also hungry for that technical expertise. For me, that tells me we might need to talk a little bit more about training. Is that accurate? Yeah. Either training yourselves or trying to find out how we train the workforce to be able to do the things that we need them to do to maintain these environments. Because like I said earlier, it is a lot. We used to know, I can speak server language, but when you start moving things into the cloud, that is not a space that I'm familiar with. So how do I adjust my knowledge? How do I migrate our schools of thought? And how do we translate all of that for our users as well, without making it too complicated? Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about one of our highest priority projects, which is imagery. Sean, do you want to come up and can I put you on the spot? Don't fall. You want this?
Yeah, sure. All right.
Thanks.
Yep.
I'm kind of tired of talking. Got it? And put it right here.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Imagery. Oh man, don't we love it?
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Yeah. All those pixels. All right. So anyway, well, we were here last year. We were talking about getting started with the tier 1, that center strip of Indiana, collecting the imagery and processing it. I was actually a little anxious at that time, trying to make sure that we hit the deadline at the end of the year for processing and getting that out. That worked really well. We hosted it on Sanborn's FTP site for anyone to download. It's actually still out there right now, only for a short time. Get it while it's still there. All right. So they can't store last year's and this year's at the same time. So we were as we start rolling in this year's imagery from 2022 collect to the spring, we'll be taking the other offline. It was really a neat. I put a survey out in the front end to ask a few questions about who's using it and what they how they use the imagery. So that was really informative for us to get that feedback. But anyway, here is there's the base product again, the 6-inch 4-band imagery. You can see that's the center strip. I don't have the imagery for this eastern side over here yet. It's coming. We also have let's see, put back. There we go. Right up along here, we also have a really nice project for DNR. The Shoreline project, the Atlas project, is a neat application that DNR undertook. But we're integrating QL1 LiDAR on that area and also 3-inch. So anyway, that's bounce forward. So here's the kind of overview of the QC process. And just to give a little bit into the weeds, not too much, we have the southern block, and then Sanborn chunks it into blocks for ease of processing. So we can go through and look at this imagery and start QCing it. This has undergone the NDOT aerial surveys team processing. So they've looked at it, they've given feedback, and Sanborn has made the corrections. We've the NDOT aerial surveys team has made the comments on this block, and Sanborn is undergoing the corrections of that information right now. And over here in the northern block, Sanborn has delivered the imagery, as you can see, and NDOT is undertaking their review right now. And I really want to put a plug out for the NDOT aerial surveys team, because they do an incredible job of looking through the imagery. They look at the bridges, they look at the seam lines, they look at the radial displacement, they look at a whole host of things that can kind of crop up with the image processing. So anyway, that's kind of the staging out of the area. And in the next slide, we have some samples. So this is the county of Jefferson actually bought up for the city of the town Madison and Hanover, Shelbyville, and Shelby County Planning Commission. They purchased. So I just took a screenshot of the county courthouse. But I think the imagery, I thought about zooming out, and I was like, well, that's not going to do the imagery justice. Let's look at those pixels. So, but anyway, you can really see in this. What I think is remarkable is the shadowing. You can really see well in those shadows. You can still see the sidewalk. You can still see the features hidden in those areas. So this is the 3-inch buy-up communities, and let's see. And we also have for next year we have the city of Huntingburg that is buying up to 3-inch. So we're really finding that it's not necessarily the counties that are buying up in this cycle, because we're delivering perhaps 6-inch imagery already. It's the cities that are finding the pricing and use for buying up. So, and there we go. Let's see. So here we've got some teasing out the differences between the LiDAR and the imagery. And we talk about the pixels, and we talk about the LiDAR data, as contours. And that's typically what we've thought of these products in the past. And what I really want to do is challenge us to take that step forward in using the imagery not only for just the RGB, but looking at that near infrared, looking at the modeling and the processing that we can do on that imagery, looking at the impervious areas, looking at vegetation, and putting these two. And then we also have the LiDAR. We have those points, and we have it's so much more than just a contour line and a point of elevation. It has the reflectance on the type of surface that it hit, so we can start to pull out and extract all kinds of features from these data sets, and that's really kind of that next challenge for GIS users and folks.
That's it. You're off the hook.
All right. Now I know who's next with it.
Thank you. And Sean will probably be a little bit modest about this, but Sean's management of this program over the last few years has been absolutely spectacular. The outreach that we're able to do, because he's very focused in this, has really improved the engagement, and it's also allowed us to think about it long-term, right? So we talk about being able to make the case to do the important things. I have one, that one's yours. You're gonna hold it, that's so sweet.
She pays some of the bills.
This is what, she's got my back. So now I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
I was talking about how great Sean is. Sean's amazing. Sean's fantastic. So one of the things that I heard from all of you was trying to make the case for why things are important, right? Which is like how to get people to care. How do you tell everybody that what you're doing is so important? And Sean focusing in this area has allowed us to show a lot of focus or a lot of priority as to why it matters. Working closely with DNR also is able to say, this is why doing the imagery program matters. This is why collecting LiDAR matters. This is why making it highly available, fast, performant matters. And these are the things that we're able to do with that. So that's really helped us a lot. It's hard to quantify sometimes our successes, but having Sean focus in that area really has enabled us to make this a stable program that I'm really excited about. We can look at 2025 and know that we are going to do another LiDAR collection and know that we're going to do another imagery collection. And making that reliable was something that all of you had as a priority as well. So thanks to Sean. Good job. All right. It's all you, man. All right, you gonna get a selfie with him, Jeff? Okay, so I'm gonna pass this off here to Marianne in just a second. I'm gonna talk a moment about one of our highest priority projects, which is the data harvest. How many of you contribute data to our statewide data harvest? A lot of counties in here, right? So I'm gonna talk a little bit about this program. So since 2008, we've been working with counties to collect addresses, roads, parcels, and government boundaries, and bringing all of those data sets together so that we can then create one data set and publish it out through Indiana Map. We use it heavily internally at the state for hundreds of different applications. Over the last several years, 14 years, that program has heavily advanced in terms of how fast we can pull the data in, how we pull the data in. We used to accept it on spreadsheets. We used to take it on napkins. That was a joke, but it was real. How do you bring those data sets together and do it in a really smart way? And so the last couple of years, we've had the pleasure of partnering with the Polis Center that allowed us to help us understand the better way to do the how, which is the collection of that data set, while we can focus on working with counties to do the data standards and implement data standards so that if we make the collection a little bit easier and we make that distribution out a little bit easier, we are able to focus on improving those data sets. I'll talk a lot later about improving those data sets, but I'm going to hand it over to Marianne to talk about the progress of this year's data harvest. You can put it right there. Put it on your shirt. I'm not going to hold it for you. Never change his mind. I would have. I really would have.
I'm Marianne. I didn't want to be up on Sean. That's why I interrupted you. You were about to say something nice. Anyway, so I'm going to talk to you about the data harvest. This is my third year working on it, and I got to tell you, I actually love it. It sounds kind of weird.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry. What? It's in my name. Well, okay, I'm Director of Geoinformatics at the Polis Center. And I'm a GIS geek, so I love this stuff. Anyway, so see now I lost my train of thought. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I really enjoy working on this. It sounds kind of weird, but it's for some reason it's just very relaxing when I work on it. I kind of like leaving all the addresses and all of that. But I'm a very weird person, so. Anyway, so there are 4 layers that we're really looking for. There are addresses, roads and lines, parcels, and boundaries. And then we ingest some additional data as well. One is the DLGF data, the real property data. So those are 6 tables that we get in. And then at the end of the day, we also create a geocoder that is hosted by the state as well. And I believe you incorporate the Esri World Geocoder was one final. Oh, no, okay, we couldn't get that. Okay. All right. It doesn't have that, but it utilizes all of the data that you provide to us, especially the address points. That is then submitted to the U.S. Department of Transportation, which is then ingested by Google and it's ingested by Esri. So your data that you provide to us after we're done with it is being used by so many people at the end of the day. I just had an email today about somebody from Canada trying to download data. Apparently they can't because they're in Canada. I just sent you an email, Sean. I know. But I get emails on a regular basis asking about the data. Is this available? And you may not always see that, but we see that. And there's just a huge interest in this information. So I just want to let you know the work that you put into this is really valuable and is appreciated and used by a lot of different people. And don't let me forget to plug the webinar. Okay, so right now we've actually already done quite a bit. These slides were from a week ago, so there's one little tiny change on this. We have all of the parcels and processed all of the parcels. We're actually done with the parcel layer. We're just waiting for the VLGF data so we can add that extra information and make it available for download. So the parcels are done. We're working on the boundaries. I think we've got a handful that trickled in over the past week. But we're going to wrap that up and hopefully make that available here this month for all of you to start downloading. And we've received, I can't read this slide on here, so I'm going to go.
Yeah, Karen.
So we've received 7 lines for the entire states, but we still have the ones over here that are in that kind of beige color. Those are incomplete, and that's because we're missing address ranges for those 25 counties. And did we ever get an answer on those 2 counties where we had address ranges last year, but we haven't received them this year?
One was a misclick from last year, and then the other one I don't know.
Okay, all right. So we're still trying to dig up. We got a couple counties last year we had address ranges, but we don't this year. Last year we did a really heavy push to get the county boundaries. We got them from all 92 counties. Thanks a lot, by the way, to Sean, because he did a lot of the legwork reaching out to folks, so we couldn't have done that without him. But we haven't pushed as hard this year because county boundaries don't really change all that much. And we figured it'd be about the same as last year. And then one of the new layers, or the new layer we asked about this year is section corners. We've received it from 8 counties. So if you haven't submitted section corners and you have them, feel free to talk to myself or Danielle or Sean or Megan today, or just send them to us. And we'd love to incorporate that into our data set. So you may be curious about where we're getting this data from, and I thought it'd be kind of interesting to show this. I don't think I've shown it this way before, but the vast majority of data we get from vendors. And there are 2 main vendors in the state, I'm sure people are. And then we get a small portion of data from counties, and boundaries are the ones that we mostly get. We usually get a combination from vendors and the counties themselves on the boundaries in general. But so you can see, most of it we get straight from the vendors. We kind of started this gold star process last year. We figured if we give some people a gold star, others would want to get gold star too, and it kind of worked. And so this year we're like, well, we'd like to give more stars, so we came up with 2. We have a gold star, which is the best star you can get. I thought about coming up with platinum too, but we kind of stopped there. That was too much work. So we have gold and silver. And we did listen to, I want to kind of point that out, but we listened to feedback from the counties. on some of the data that we were requiring in order to get the gold star. But the gold star means that you are providing all of the data that we're requesting in the desired format. So not in your format that you have on your end, but in the schema that we're looking for. And not just that, you have to populate it. So we are looking for these fields to be populated for address points. I'm not going to name them all. Similar fields to be populated for the streets and lines. And then we just wanted parcels with the state parcel ID. And we also, I think, wanted to get some boundaries, yes, administrative boundaries. At least one boundary layer is all we were asking for in the county. And I'm happy to say that we have quite a few gold stars. I haven't counted. About 13 gold stars, if I can count. So that's been really great, and I know some of you worked hard, and I'm looking at one of them, worked really hard to get that. Yes, that guy right over there, Steve, thank you. And then we have a bunch of silver stars, and the silver stars is basically saying, okay, give us the parcels, that's a really low level of effort. Give us one of these address points for streets and lines, and give us at least one administrative boundary. And we have a bunch of those that qualified as well. Most, if not all, the gold stars are straight from counties, but we have a bunch of silver stars that also came from vendors. Actually, I think we have a handful of data from vendors that qualified for a gold star. So I really want to thank you all for that, because that saves us a lot of work on our end in terms of cleaning up the data. Just to give you some examples, I think for streets, we have 10 fields just for the address, and you may have it as one on your end. So we have to go and split that up into 10 fields. So one less county where we have to do that is really nice. And then if you populate it correctly, you have the domains right, so we know there's no fact fingering. Street is spelled as street, not with 3 E's, not with 1 E, not ST period. It's just all very nice and clean and consistent. And I think if you talk to folks that went through the process of cleaning up their data, you'll find that they found a number of issues on their end and were able to clean up their data and get a better data set on their end. So it's a worthwhile effort. And again, it saves us time because it's something we otherwise have to do every single year. And that's kind of silly to do the same thing every year. So we really appreciate that. Next year, you should all aim for a gold star. That'd be great. I'd like this map to be entirely gold or silver.
Webinar.
Yes.
That's mine.
Okay. I also want to point out, tomorrow we have a webinar at sometime in the afternoon. And I can look it up in a little bit. But we have a webinar, and we're going to have 3 counties that are going to talk to us about the work that they did thank you. 2, not 4. And I want to thank Travis and Steve. I don't know, Ganti, I don't know if you're in the room, but if you are, I don't know what you look like. Is he in the room? No, okay.
No, he's not here.
So we're going to have Wayne, Noble, and Hamilton, I hope I got them right, that are going to talk to us tomorrow to show how they approached modifying and changing their data, massaging their data to match the schema that we're looking for. And all 3 approached it differently. So I think it'll be kind of an interesting way for you to look at how you could implement that internally on your ends to clean up your data and make it fit the schema as well. So I encourage you to attend that. If you didn't get the invite, please let me know and I'll forward it to you. So just, you know what I look like now, so you should be able to find me. But you can also talk to Megan or Sean or Danielle, and we'll be happy to help you. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you. You're awesome. Thank you. All right, so I have one kind of off-the-wall thing that I want to talk about real quick, and then we're going to talk a little bit about county boundaries. So I also want to point out that I think I mentioned this earlier. I bragged on Sean, so I'm going to brag on Marianne. Her brain works in a really mysterious way, but it's fascinating, and she's incredibly smart. So we have been able to move this program forward at an exponential pace. And repeating that year over year has been really exciting. So it's enabled us to do the things that we're getting ready to do. I want to talk a minute about broadband. Has anybody in here been a part of your local government's broadband efforts or integrated into the discussions of broadband? Raise your hands high, because I'm really curious. How many in the room? Chris, you have to raise your hand. So I'm mentioning this here because it's a huge focus from our office, and you're going to see a lot of things that are coming down from state government related to broadband. These questions should not necessarily be directed to us, but we could certainly help you. We do have an office of broadband that's within our Lieutenant Governor's office. And Leah, who stepped out of the room, is helping to support them. They have a lot of funding that's coming in. They're trying to figure out where to put it, right? And we're working to understand where we have broadband coverage. This is one of those mysterious utilities that we don't quite understand where everything is. So our office is helping to support this effort. It's taking quite a bit of creativity to understand the way that the federal government's doing the things and the way the state government's going to do the things. So, excuse me, if you do hear or have some questions about broadband, if this is coming up in your communities, we can have this conversation. We could create a forum within IJIC to focus on this if this is something of interest to you, because it is very connected to infrastructure funding. It's very connected to some of your long-term strategic plans for your governments. So I just want to bring it up here. All right, I'm going to pass this back over to Sean because he's such a rock star. And something that came up in our discussions last year was heavily focused on county boundaries. So we listened and worked very closely with our Office of State Lands to help us figure out the county boundary gap, and we did some experimenting, so. You got it? You want me to hold it?
Oh, I've got,
Yeah.
there we go. All right. I did it once right.
There you go.
think I'd be able to repeat. Okay. So really, I want to give kudos to DNR for stepping up and putting the conversation that we had last year into action. And what we did is we looked at the gaps, the overlaps, and tried to compare different data types. Let's see, is the next slide?
Yep.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, this is the one that I'm going to talk about. So we looked at compared the county boundaries, and we looked at those county boundaries. We got all 92 county boundaries. We were so excited. And then we got the county parcels. Yeah, we did those, and the road center lines and the road vertices. But Jill from DNR, the land office, she went through and compared all these different layers and also applied some of the rules that we use in county government for who's like in charge of the southern boundary, who's in charge of the northern boundary of the county. So and she looked at you can see here the different types of boundaries that were. Let's see here. This isn't the slide that I thought. The one slide it shows which types of so was it the street center line? Maybe it was the street center line that was actually best representative. Maybe it was the county boundary that was best representative in other areas, and perhaps it was the actual county boundary in others. So it was really interesting to take a close look at those county boundaries, and then we also get into the southern counties with the hydrologic, with the rivers, and seeing, okay, there's the Oxbow, it cut through, a few years ago, and who's really land is it on the right or left side of the Oxbow. So it was really so anyway. Going through this process, with taking the input from last year, and this was the driving force for the asking of the section corners this year, because the section corners are that underlying layer that's used to help determine where the county boundaries are and where these other administrative boundaries are. So that's sort of the segue into this year's data collection. As you recall, we had for section corners.
I think you kind of covered that. Yeah. All right. Cool. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so what I want to kind of segue into here is how we do all these really great things. And we do them through collaboration with this really simple diagram, right? Pretty straightforward. But the truth is why we're here and the reason and the why this works is a much more simple approach. If I have an apple and Mike has an apple and we trade apples, we each have one apple. But if I have an idea and Mike has an idea and we trade ideas, now we each have two ideas. And if you're familiar in understanding the ideas of a compound effect and how if you continue to share those ideas and if everybody continues to share across ideas, it's exponential the impact that we can have. So collaboration and in this room and opening up those barriers and just really sharing ideas is what helps us to understand where we should go next. So we can be innovative, so we can support you, so you can enable us and everybody in the Indiana geospatial world and even beyond is impacted. So where we're headed next, a little bit of this person on the moon. And I love to think about this because we want to walk through some local to state data flows. We want to continue this discussion of collaborative editing. We are focusing in an area of cloud optimized data, which I hardly even know how to say, let alone understand what that means. But how, when we put things in the cloud, we have to make them different, we have to build them differently. We have to make them differently enabled so that people can access them in the right ways. And then we're also working to improving our image services. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. We're moving some architecture around, but being sure that the imagery that is spectacular, that the state has collected for over a decade, is actually able to be utilized is a really high priority. So those are the areas where we're headed to. Joanne mentioned this earlier. This is the QR code. If you haven't registered for our GIS day that's coming up in less than a month, I would really encourage you to do so. It's free. Also, much like this event. We also feed you first time, right? So that's fantastic. So go ahead and register. It's downtown Indianapolis. It's not that scary, I promise. The parking is a bit of a challenge, but all of that information will be provided to you in an email. So before I move on to a break, I will be remiss if I did not mention a few other partners that have enabled our office to do some really incredible things this year. We mentioned the Polis Center and Marianne and her group, and what they've allowed us to do on the data harvest has been amazing. It's enabling us to do some things on the Framework Data Improvement Project, which we'll talk about here after the break. Our partners with Geoconvergence, formerly 39 Degrees North. We had the opportunity this year to give a co-presentation with them at the Esri User Conference, which was really exciting. It was my first time talking there. It was incredibly intimidating, but it was fantastic. Our infrastructure project and that migration would not be possible without their foresight, their understanding of the systems, but their also understanding of the way that we work. So I appreciate them listening to us. Also, our strategic planning effort was enabled by the company, it's named AppGeo. And that group is very focused specifically in the geospatial space, if you will. We hit the ground running on that project. So we were able to do things and see things that were going to come in 5 years that we wouldn't have necessarily been able to had we gone a different path. It is important that we keep this community focused, and we do it with your help. We do it with the help of our commercial partners, our universities. I see several students here I'm really excited to see. And I look forward to the next little hour that we're going to have. We're going to have a short break, and we're going to talk a little bit more about framework data improvement and where we're headed next with breaking down some barriers on data sharing. So with that, Kevin, can we take a break?
I think so.
Okay. 10 minutes?
Yeah.
10? All right. Thank you. Huh? Yeah, I stole that from somebody.